Hello everybody, and welcome to this latest installment of How the ArchivesSpace Sausage Gets Made. My name's Mark Triggs, and I'm a member of the Hudson Molonglo team. We're thinking recently that we haven't done one of these screencasts for quite a while now, and so I thought today I might spend the next hour or so remedying that by doing a kind of live coding demonstration of some ArchivesSpace development. What I was thinking, because I've seen a few people on the mailing lists looking to do this, I thought I might create a new plugin and within that plugin implement a new importer type for ArchiveSpace. I thought in the interest of sort of doing something original that I would write an importer that could take a zip file of MP3s, the kind you get if you buy an album from Bandcamp, and then create some records corresponding to the ID3 metadata from those MP3s. There's kind of two reasons I thought this was a good exercise. One is just that I don't have to think of a record format to import if I do this, and that's nice for me. And the other was just because it sort of shows a slightly quirky take on the whole importer thing, because generally we're importing text-based file formats, but in fact the ArchivesSpace importer code doesn't really care what you import, so theoretically you can take any kind of file and do anything to it to produce records. So I'm going to charge ahead with that. Maybe I will start with a plan here. Actually first I'll just talk about my development environment here. So I have ArchiveSpace checked out from Git here, and I'm running off the Ruby 9k Rails 5 branch. Nothing I'm going to do is actually predicated on running this branch. The only reason I'm using it is because towards the end of March this branch is going to become the standard ArchiveSpace master, because we've been doing some work on upgrading Rails and upgrading JRuby, and I just thought it would give this screencast a better shot at a decent shelf life if I used the latest and greatest. So if you want to use master or one of the release versions, that should be fine. I'm not planning on doing anything that requires any of the new Ruby stuff or any of the new Rails stuff. I guess one notable exception, I know I happen to have fixed automatic hot reloading of plugin code, so if you're running one of the other branches you might find you have to restart ArchiveSpace a little more often. But if you see this after much, you can ignore that qualification. Right, so I need a plan, so let's have a plan file. So we're going to have a new importer. It's going to take a zip file containing some MP3s. ID3 metadata I think is fairly sparse, but we'll see what we can get. So I was thinking we're going to get the artist name, the title name, the album, the year. I think there are some comments and a track number. And we'll have each of these per track. And so we're going to take that file, unzip it, grab the metadata out of the MP3s, and then we're going to create some ArchiveSpace records. And so what I was thinking we could do is have a top-level resource record, and that will represent the album. And that will have the title of the album. I think a resource requires an extent, so let's say that this will have an extent which will just be the number of tracks on the album. I think we also need, I guess we need language, but we can just default that. And then I guess that's probably it for what we're going to have in the resource. And then we'll have a number of archival objects. So we'll have archival object, one per track. That will have the title of the track. What else have we got? I guess we can put the year in there, maybe the comments as a note field. We'll find somewhere to put that. The track number will become the position of the archival object in the resource tree. I guess that's pretty much everything. What have I forgotten? That's probably it. Oh, I guess the artist, yeah. So for the artist, I think let's actually link them to an agent. So we'll create an agent person for the artist of the track and link the record to it. And that'll be a nice demonstration of that. Okay, so I guess we'll have an agent person, which will just have the name of the artist. So that's the plan. So I'll jump in and start by creating a new plugin. So jumping back to my ArchivesSpace directory here, under the plugins directory, you can see we have all of the default stuff plus a few bits and pieces that I've been messing around with. So I'm going to create a new plugin called MP3 Importer. And then within this directory, we just want to create the top-level plugin directory structure. I have a browser here with a bit of stuff I've opened just in case it's useful. This is the plugins README under the plugins directory, and it has the breakdown of what a plugin can have. Because I'm defining an importer, I'm going to be working pretty much entirely in the ArchivesSpace backend. So I'm just going to put my new importer code under the model directory, and we'll see how we go. So under my plugin directory, I'll create a new model directory, and I'll just create a new file within that called mp3. I'll call it mp3 converter. I'll probably confuse myself between importer and converter at some point, but in ArchivesSpace code terms, what we're creating is a converter. So let's talk about converters. To create a converter, you implement the converter interface. So you subclass the converter class that's provided by ArchivesSpace. So I could say class mp3 converter is going to extend the converter class. Let's have a quick look at the ArchivesSpace converter. Oh, actually, I should say one thing in this branch that is worth noting is I've boosted up the documentation here. So if you look at master in the next few weeks, you might not see this, but I realized as I was thinking about doing this that the documentation was terrible, so I tried to improve it a bit. So converter is an interface used to implement new imported types. To implement your own converter, create a subclass of this class, which we've done, and implement the implement me methods marked below. And so you can see there's just a couple of these. There's basically just the three that we need to implement. So I'm just going to copy these straight into my source, and we will work through them. Okay, so the first one, import types, returns descriptive metadata for the import types implemented by this converter. We can get rid of the exception here. So the big idea is that this just allows the ArchivesSpace frontend to get a list of the available imports, and these get shown when the user is selecting which import type they want to run. I'll just call this name mp3, and we'll just say import a zip file of mp3s. That's what we need to do for that. This thing returns an array because you can actually implement multiple import types within a single converter if you want, but in this case we're not. Next one, instance for. This basically just this allows the converter to indicate whether or not it will handle a particular import type. So in this case we're just going to say if the import type requested is mp3, then yes, we'll handle it, and we just return an instance of ourselves. Otherwise we return nil and we don't handle it. And then run actually kicks the whole thing off. So process input file and load records into batch. Actually, I'll just jump back to the converter and show. So the converter, when an instance is created, gets handed the input file, which is the file uploaded by the user to be imported, and it's expected to load whatever records it wants to import into ArchivesSpace into this thing called batch. And batch is basically just a temporary file that you can hand your JSON model objects to, and it'll write them out to disk and then stream them and do the right thing to load them into ArchivesSpace. So from our point of view, all we care about with batch is that we can shovel records into it. So we're going to be creating records from the MP3s we have in JSON model format, which is the ArchivesSpace native format, and then load them into the batch, and the import system will take care of the rest. Well, that's the plan. So really all of the work is going to be here in this run method. So before I do anything else, maybe let's just verify that I haven't screwed up anything yet. Let's just put in a hello world in this run method, so it's not going to do anything. And I've got a new plugin. I need to jump back to my ArchivesSpace top level directory here and create a config file to tell it to load the plugin. So we've checked out of Git, which actually doesn't have the top level config directory there, but I can just create that. So let's do that. And within config.rb, I'll just have appconfig plugins equals mp3 importer, which is the name I gave the plugin at the top level here. That one. So that should be enough to get this thing to load, and then I can start up ArchivesSpace. I actually already have it running, so I'm just going to restart the backend. I have this crazy Emacs key binding for starting up the different ArchivesSpace bits because I do this all the time. So, but what I'm doing here is effectively just the same of jumping into a terminal at the top level and doing build run backend dev server to start the backend, build run frontend dev server for the front end, and build run indexer for the indexer. So that's all I'm doing, but I'll just do it my own crazy way because I'm like that. Okay, so I'm going to restart the ArchivesSpace backend, which hopefully won't take too long. Okay, looking acceptable. Right, so now I should be able to go to the ArchivesSpace front end and import something and have it print hello just to indicate that it's doing anything. So here's my ArchivesSpace instance. I'm just going to create a new import job. And it will be import data. And it's not showing up, so something's not working. We're off to a great start. So I would have expected the MP3 thing to show up here, but it didn't, which means I have messed something up. Yes, okay, let's jump back and have a look at what I did. MP3 importer is right. Oh, it's not model, sorry. Yeah, I can't read. It's not model, it's backend model, so that's why that didn't work. So, sorry. So under the plugin, under MP3 importer, it should be backend, and then within backend we have model, like that. Alright. False start. Kill the backend. Start again. That's why you should read the documentation carefully and not just assume you know everything when you don't. Okay, take two. Back here, where am I? Yes, reload. Okay, this time for sure. There we go, it's even at the top. It looks a bit stupid because I haven't created a translation for this MP3 thing, but yeah, that's the importer anyway. So we can add a file to that. Yeah, you can see I've got some test data here. This Julia Kent Green and Grey was an album I thought I would demonstrate with when we're done. It's available on Bandcamp if you like cello music, it's very nice. I can save myself some time by uploading anything, so here's a 0 byte file. Because we're not actually doing anything with the file, it doesn't really matter what's in it. So let's queue that and just see what happens. I think we should just see it say no records imported. That's if I haven't messed something else up. There we go. Okay, so nothing really happened, which is what we expected. If I jump back to my log, right, yeah, I can see the hello world. So there, small victories. Actually, before I go any further, I might just... So I find having to import through the UI kind of tedious. So I might just create a custom backend controller that I can hit to kick off this whole converter process without having to, find my mouse every time I want to do something. So at the same level here, I'm going to check this now because I know I can't be trusted. So I need to create a controllers directory, and then under that we're going to have a new controller. I'll just call dev.rb, doesn't really matter. And I'll just create a controller in here that I can hit with the browser just to kick off a test import. I can't remember anything, so I usually just pilfer code from wherever I can find it. So I'm just going to grab a bit here from the accessions controller. That'll do, and copy that in. Right, so we're going to have a new endpoint. I'll make it a GET request just for convenience. It doesn't have to be any of that. We can just say get/dev, and this is going to do a thing. Wish I could type. No parameters on this one, so we'll just set that to be empty. No permissions required either. Okay, just leave that blank. And it's going to return a 200 something. Doesn't really matter. And then it's going to create an instance of my MP3 converter. That takes an input file, so I'll just pass in the lovely Julia Kent album, why not? And then let's just run it, and whatever run gives us will just turn into a string so we can see it in the browser. I wonder if parems. We have this weird thing. Parems takes an empty list and permissions takes an empty array. I wonder why we did that. Maybe it doesn't. I can't remember. Like I said, can't remember anything. So that's a new controller. I think I'll just need to restart the backend to get it to pick that new file up. So I'll just quickly do that. And then I should be able, in the browser, to hit, it's going to be 4567 dev. So backend runs on port 4567. It's not up yet. Okay, there we go. Right, well that didn't do anything, but it did print hello, so I think that's good. Okay, so now we've got a reasonably quick way of just running that code without having to upload things and whatnot. So I guess just as a really simple litmus test, if I jump back to my MP3 converter, what I could do now is just say, okay, we'll return input file and batch, and we'll just confirm that we have those parameters. Yeah, that looks reasonable. So you can see we got back the file I set and some funny looking. If I do a view source, we can actually see the whole thing. Okay, so that's looking good. So I think we're ready to go. I guess the first thing I need to do then is take a zip file and open it. So I know that Ruby has a zip gem built in, but I can't remember how to use it because I can't remember anything. So let's just have a look for someone to help me. Ruby zip. Okay, basic zip file creation, recursive zipping, we want to read a zip. Save a zip, default permission, reading a zip. Open the thing, iterate over the thing. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, we'll just grab some of that. Alright, so we're gonna open a zip file. We have input file is what we want to open. Yes, I don't think I need that comment. We're gonna have an entry, and then an entry has a name, and we can ask it for an input stream. So I guess these zip files will contain things like album covers and things like that we don't care about. So maybe I'll just for now say next if entry dot name, maybe next unless entry dot name end with mp3. That'll get those. And then we pretty much just want to open the stream. Maybe initially I'll just print the entry name and check this is working. Save that. Just hit refresh on this. Oh, it actually returned something. Interesting. Oh, I guess that's just because the zip file each returns the entries. So that's probably fine. You can see we at least have some files. If I look in the backend log, yeah, we've printed out just the MP3s, which is what we wanted. So that looks good. So next thing I guess is to read each entry and pull out the ID3 tags. I did a little bit of research. The only research I did, in fact, was to look for a library that I can use for this, and I was looking at one called ID3 tag, and it looked decent. It was written in plain Ruby, which gives us a good chance of it actually working in JRuby, and it didn't have any stupid dependencies, so I thought that looked good. Okay, so let's pull that in. Oh, and in fact, this is a rite of passage for writing a plugin is figuring out how to get gems to load that aren't shipped with ArchivesSpace. So here we go. The trick is plugins at their top level, which is here, can define a gem file and request their own gems. I can't remember gems file. What's the URL I need? So we need a URL, and I'm just going to say gem id3 tag, and that's all we need for that. But for development mode, we just need to pull that gem into our gems directory, And doing that is non-obvious, and we should fix this. But the trick is to start at your top level ArchivesSpace directory and run build, run bundler, which will just invoke bundler, -d gem file equals, and then just give it a path to the gem file for your plugin. I'm just giving it an absolute path because I think it runs out of build or somewhere funny, so that might save me having to figure that out. And you can now witness the glory of Australian internet as we wait for Bundler to do its thing. I'm fairly sure that half of Australian Ruby programmers' time is just spent waiting for Bundler. That's a bit like Maven for Java, I guess. So we'll just give that a second and I'll drink my tea. There we go, 30 seconds of my life I'll never get back. Okay, so that's got the gem there. I'm going to need to restart the backend to get that to load, so let's do that now. Hopefully this will be the last of the backend restarts, I guess we'll see. Basically you have to restart the backend if you add a new file or if you change the gem set. Hopefully everything else will hot reload as you change it, but don't hold me to that. It's sometimes a bit flaky. Okay, so within the MP3 importer file, MP3 converter, sorry, I should now be able to require ID3 tag. And if I just hit refresh on my little thing here, right, it didn't blow up, so let's assume that worked. Right, so how do I use this? You open a file to your favorite MP3 song, and then just pass the file handle to this ID3 tag thing. So let's do that. Back in the zip thing we saw we can do an entry.getInputStream, which I had but lost, and then that should let us say print the tag artist and print the tag title and album. We hopefully see them in the logs, and it's a disaster. Oh, right. I'm guessing that the difference here is that the zip input stream isn't quite compatible with a regular file. So I was kind of hoping to avoid having to fully unzip the thing. Maybe I will just extract each zip file entry to a temp file, and then we'll work off the temp file and delete it once we're done. It's probably just as easy as anything. Alright, so I'm going to need a temp file, and somewhere here I'm going to say temp file dot open, I think, track do temp file, what do I call it? I guess I'll call it mp3. And then I think there's a way, I think there's io.copy stream that copies from one handle to another, so I should be able to say copy that into my temp file. I guess I should remember to delete the temp file once I'm done. Ensure mp3.unlink. And then I think I can pull this up into yeah, so now I read the ID3 tag from the mp3 instead, print it all out, delete the thing, have an extra end for good luck, why not? Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Alright. Did it print? Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay, we got some stuff. It looks like artist, track name, title, album title. Cool. Okay, well I might as well pull out the other bits. So we could say tag. Where's my plan? What was it? Tag dot year. Tag dot. Well, let's move this stuff down. What order should I go in? Maybe album, artist, title, year, comments. Maybe track. What's the track number? Got an example? Oh yeah. Track new. Good. Cheeky new line, why not? Yeah, good. casted yet. And then the log. There we go. Okay, we got our stuff. Good. Oh, and we have a comment. Okay, good. Right. Alright, so we can read a zip file and pull out the metadata, so we're half done, I'm sure. The ArchivesSpace bit should be easy. uh, um, I guess looking at this run method, I mean, the run method's going to end up doing everything. It's kind of the main workhorse of this thing, so I might just pull this stuff out into its own class, because it's kind of, the business of reading a zip file and all of that is kind of separate to all of this, so I'll just cheese it and put it straight in here, because it's quicker. I can't call it MP3 converter, can I? MP3 reader, MP3 tag reader? I don't know. Naming things. Let's do that. And we'll just say that's going to take the input file and just stash it away. And then I'll give it an each method that does all this. So that won't change. So open the input file, do the thing, open a temp file, copy the thing. Shame to have to copy it. Oh well. And I guess now instead of putting all this stuff, we want to actually return something helpful. I could just return the tag, but might be nice to kind of insulate the rest of the code from this particular ID3 library. So maybe I'll be disciplined and actually let's actually have a thing called track, which will just be a struct, which is going to have the stuff you see there: artist, album title, track number, year, comments. Yes, and then I'll just basically chop that out and pass all that stuff in. Track.new blah. Might actually stick it on one thing, and we'll just yield one of those. Yeah, seems reasonable. Probably wrong for some reason. We'll find out. So now here I just need to say mp3 tag reader dot new input file each to track, and I'll just print the track. Hopefully that has some thing we can look at. Alright, hasn't changed. Right, and we have it printing out some structs. Track number there. And year. I wonder whether they should be integers. Maybe I'll do, yeah, I might as well. I'll do the conversion now. So tag.year, I can just, oh, sorry, not 2s. Cast it like that. Convert it rather. That'll throw an error if the thing isn't set, I think, and if it isn't a proper number, but I'm probably only going to test with one zip file anyway, so it's probably fine. Yep, cool. It looks okay. Alright. So I think that's the data we want there. So I guess the next thing to do is start thinking about how we load these things into ArchivesSpace, which is kind of the whole point of this thing. So I'm just gonna load all of the tracks into an array because I think I'm gonna want that. Let's start out by creating a resource. So what we want to do ultimately is say like resource equals JSON model resource from hash, and then we're going to figure out what fields we want to map to which ArchivesSpace fields. And then once we have that resource, we just say batch shovel resource. And as we saw before, this batch thing is just basically a holding tank for the records that are going to be imported. The big idea really is just that it doesn't hold them all in memory, so that if you've got 100,000 records you're importing, they don't kill the system. So all we need to do in this run thing is really create the record, load it into the batch, and then the import system should take care of the rest. So let's get started. So from hash just takes a regular Ruby hash, and this is where I'm going to embarrass myself by showing how little of the ArchivesSpace data model I can remember. So let's see how I go. I'm pretty confident that a resource record has a title. So let's say that the title of the resource is the first track album. It's a bit weird that I guess we just have a list of tracks. There's no real concept of an album here. So I guess I'll just say Ray's track list was empty if tracks.empty, just so I know that I've got at least one. And then what else does a resource need? Well, let's find out. Let's just start by giving it one of those and loading into the batch. And in fact, I think now, let's see, if I hit refresh here, oh, I've already got an error. Undefined method JSON model. Right. I'm using a JSON model here, and to use that in your class, you need to import JSON model. You often don't have to do this in ArchivesSpace because a lot of things implicitly import JSON model, but not this. Okay, so that's that. Don't tell me. Oh, sorry. I've been writing a lot of Go recently, so not import, include. Yeah. Why did that even succeed? I don't want to even think about that. That's terrifying. Oh, well, anyway. Right, so you can see we're actually throwing some helpful error messages here saying why my resource wasn't good enough. Let's start with something easy. I guess ID 0 and level I can probably figure out if I don't have to think too hard. So ID 0, I don't really have a good candidate for what a good identifier would be. I'm just going to pick a random string. And then I guess level is just going to be collection. I think that's valid. Try that. Alright. Well, okay, extents. So extents is an array, and I can't remember what's in it. So actually, here's a trick while we're doing things. If I put in an extents thing like this with an empty object and hit refresh, you'll see it makes no difference. It complains that I needed to give it at least one extent, and I actually gave it 0. And that's just because the backend strips empty objects out like that. So it's as if I typed that. Can you hear the cockatoos in the background? There's an Australian bird for you. Anyway, so whenever you have a record type that you're handing to JSON model like this, you can always say JSON model type extent, or whatever the name of the record is. And A, that stops it being an empty record, which stops it getting dropped, and B, it gives ArchivesSpace a hint about exactly what record type it's meant to be. This field is always accepted, but generally not required. It's actually only there because there are contexts where a single array can contain different types of things. Like an example I think is notes, where there are multiple notes types, and ArchivesSpace can't always tell just by looking at them which one you intended to provide. So it's like a little type hint. But if we do that, you can see that it's now telling me why my extent is no good, and so we can start filling that out. So we need what? Number, portion, and extent type. So number I was thinking was just going to be, if we review the plan, number was just going to be the number of tracks on the album, which we now have. Tracks dot length. God, once you've used enough programming languages, you never know how to get the length of an array. I can't totally remember where the number there is meant to be a number or not. I'll just leave it as a number and we'll see what happens. Sometimes numbers can be silly things, like I think 5 or something. Extent type, I don't know, can't remember those. What was the other one? Portion. Oh, I think that's just like whole, isn't it? Portion, whole tracks. In fact, extent type, I'm just going to say track. Tracks? Let's pluralize it, why not? It should be consistent. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get away with this, but let's give it a go. Oh, there you go, yeah, so the number has to be a string. I think that's because you can type silly numbers. That seems wildly inconsistent. Extent type invalidated tracks must be one of, okay, well, which of these cassettes kind of got an old school charm to it? Cubic feet, gigabytes, leaves, blip, blip, blip. I'm going to add tracks. I think we want tracks. Don't press me. Controlled values. I love this list. Could be anywhere. Extent, type. I thought that was the quickest I've ever found anything in that list, so it's a great day. Yes. Give me tracks. Okay. From the top. Ha! Winning at extents. Okay. Dates. Let's think. I guess I'll just give it the year. So, same trick, JSON model type, date, yeah, I have no memory. Let's see. Dates, why didn't that work? JSON model type. Oh. No, that should have worked. Come on. Properties required but was missing. Is not. Oh, it is. Sorry, yeah, screwed up my nesting. Huh. Let's see. It's the let's make mistakes recording. Right. Date type and label. I think date type is that like single? And then label. Don't know. What's label? Okay, yeah, right. Agent. Let's say publication. I know when it was created. And then expression is required. Oh yeah, so I can get away with an expression. And I might do that because I don't have a exact date. I don't know whether I could have just given it a year, but let's just say track 0, year. I think that's a string. Yeah, see, all my effort of turning them into integers was pointless because I just needed strings anyway. Okay, right, so I think that's telling me now that my resource record is okay, so that's lovely. In fact, I guess what I could do, just by way of a little trickery here, is to say, you never usually have to deal with this, but I think the batch has a get output path. Like ultimately what happens is it all gets written to a file. I might need to flush it. Flush all the records to the file, and then you can read it out if you really want to. I think if I return that, I should actually see the JSON. No, I didn't. Oh, I know why. And in fact, I think I've made a... Is this thing reporting an error? No. That should be fixed. The reason this is quietly failing, I think, is because I haven't given this record a URI, and to import a record it has to have a URI. I had actually... I thought I'd fixed this. It was meant to throw an exception if this happens. I'll just verify that this is the issue. So, URIs in the import process are kind of interesting because you don't really know in advance which repository you'll be importing into, or if you want to link records together, the usual way we do that is by linking them via their URIs, but before they've been imported, you don't actually know what the URI is going to end up being. So we get around that by just saying that the URI can just have, in this case, it's a repository record, so you can give it any repository number and it just ignores it anyway. And then resources, and then the trick here is to say import underscore, and then just give it a random hex string. So we can just say, there is the resource URI. Oh, and in fact, I'm going to need that in a minute, we'll see, so I'm just going to pull that into a variable. We'll call that resource URI is that. And that should be enough. So yeah, basically, as long as your URI is formatted like this, and this bit here, this QRandom bit is just A through F, 0 through 9, then that's good enough for the system to figure it out. And if you use this URI in other places when you're creating the records to be imported, the ArchivesSpace import process will turn those sort of placeholder URIs into real ones and link everything together. So that's good. So hopefully that fixes that. It does, yeah. So, I mean, this really should have thrown an error because of that missing URI. It's not at all helpful to have that silent drop, so I'm going to review that. But anyway, I won't do it on the stream. So we have a resource record, which is good. So I think the next step is probably to start creating archival objects. And if we review the plan, I think I said, yeah, one per track. So for that, I think we just want to say tracks.each. And we're going to say AO is JSON model archival object from hash. And then we're going to, once we've got one of those, we're going to load it into the batch. And I think that's all we need to do. If I hit refresh here, it should start giving me some errors again. Okay, so we need level, which we kind of knew. Let's call that file. I guess it's a good time to put the title in, since I know I'm going to want that, so that'll just be the track title. What else did I say? The year. Yeah, I guess let's have. We can just nick the. Can basically just nick this again, can't we? Except instead of track 0, it'll just be track. Comments field. And artist. Okay. Well, artist. Artist is going to be an agent link. So the way we're going to do that is just you provide linked agents. I should just say too. All of this stuff is in the JSON schemas. I just happen to remember bits and pieces, but if we jump to the ArchivesSpace repo and then have a look under common, common schemas. So normally you would start by just looking at archival object, and it has all of the fields. Well, not quite all of the fields supported by archival object, but you'll see linked agents isn't actually here, and the reason for that is because a lot of these schemas share a lot in common, and so we have this notion of inheritance. So if you look here, we've got parent abstract archival object. So that gives you a hint that if you just jump back and have a look here, you'll find abstract archival object, and all of these properties are part of archival objects as well. And so if we scroll down, you can see there's a bunch of things, and the one we care about here is linked agents, and that's an array of references. And it also needs a role, which I guess we'll see. So an array of references is basically an array of references to agent records. So jumping back to the code, what I want to do here is say it's an array, and each one of these members is going to be a reference to a URI, like agents, people, 123. As before, we don't actually know the URI of the agent record yet, so we're going to have to do something about that. So what I'll do here is just create a little helper method called, I don't know, create agent or something. And let's just say that it takes the artist name and it's going to return a URI that we can use to link to that agent. And it's going to have to be clever enough to say, okay, well, I've seen this artist before and I've already created it and assigned it a URI. So, we'll do that. Okay, so if I put the, let's have a private method create agent, and it's just going to take the agent name. So I guess the basic thing we want to do here is to say JSON model agent person from hash, and it's the same thing as before. I can remember that an agent has names in an array, which you could go and look at the agent person schema, although I think as with archival object it's actually under the abstract agent schema or something like that. And the type of the name is actually name person. I've probably shown this in a previous screencast. So agent person uses name person, agent corporate entity uses name corporate entity, and so on. So for each agent type there's a corresponding name type. And I can't remember exactly what that's going to look like, so let's just try that and let that fail. Right, so names wants a primary name and a name order. You're meant to split names into first name, last name. I'm feeling lazy, so I'm just going to pass the, I should really call that artist, agent name's okay. I'm just going to put the whole thing in a single string and then just say that the name order is direct, which is, close enough for government work. Oh, and it needs a sort name. I think you can generate the sort name. Let's have a look. If I jump back to here, where am I? Abstract archival object. So yeah, there's an abstract name which all the names inherit from, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, so there's a sort name auto-generate, and if that's set, then it just figures it out, sticks together the last name and the first name in the right order. So I think I can just say here, auto name, sort name auto-generates true, and that should shut that up. Oops, the ref. So now we're back on the linked agent 0 ref. Oh yeah, I've done something stupid. Oh, this is returning the wrong thing. So this thing is, we're going to need a URI for this too actually, which I've also forgotten again. So we're going to say agent URI is going to be agents, people, import secure random dot hex, and then when I create the agent, I'll just assign that URI. And this thing needs to return the URI so that we can reuse it. Oh, right, sorry. So we create the agent. We should also add it to the batch so it gets imported. Now, so the trick here is that we only want to do this when we first hit this agent. So if we've seen this agent before, then don't do anything. I guess I'll just put in a little hash to keep track of the ones we've seen, and then we can say if seen agents by that name, then just return, well, yeah, just return URI, and then otherwise generate a new URI, generate the agent, load it into the batch, and just record the fact that we have seen them. Yeah, that should be okay. And so then this thing should now be returning a URI, which is what this error here was complaining about. The linked agent also needs a role. I think that can just take creator, which would be appropriate. Oops. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, good. Right, so we've got a fair bit of stuff there now. So, does that mean our archival object was actually inadvertently okay? I guess so. So what have we got? We've got, this is the agent we created for Julia Kent. Looks okay. And oh no, and then we've got a resource, which we already had. So there's nothing else here actually. The agent, the archival objects haven't been created yet. Oh, and that's because I haven't given them a URI yet. So yeah, this is a terrible gotcha. We need to fix this. It will be fixed. This is going to be very similar to the resource URI, so I'll just nab that, and except it's going to be archival objects, and I can't type. URI, and then add that to the batch. What did I do? I haven't done anything with the track number yet. If we return to the plan, so I said I was going to take the title of the track, which I did, the year, which I did, the comments. I haven't done the comments yet either, or the track number. So I think track number is probably easier. That's just going to be, there's an option called position, and that just, you give it a number and it sorts by that number. So when you look at the resource tree, they'll show up in the right order. So what am I doing? I guess when I iterate over the list of tracks up here, I can say each with index. I can never remember the order. I think it's that order. So that'll just go 0 through however many tracks there are, and then however many tracks there are minus 1 if we're being accurate. And then we can just pass that through as the position. Comments, yeah. Okay, I'm going to have to dive into notes, which is always character testing. I think I'm going to have a note JSON model type. I think it's note single part, because this is going to be a pretty simple note. Let's see what it thinks. Note 0 type, okay, it needs a type and some content. Great. Content can just be the content of the track comment. Did I say comment or comments? Comments. Comments. And type, I don't know. Valid value, must be one of abstract link material. I'll just say physdesk. And the other one, what? Oh, content. Yeah, I think content. You can provide multiple pieces of text for a note, so it takes an array. How are we looking? All right. We have the agent, yes. We have the resource, yes. We still don't have the archival object. What did I do wrong? Oh, I'm doubly stupid. Don't you hate Ruby? I know I do. That should be that. But instance variables just default quietly to nil, and this thing should blow up. I'm going to put a fix me in here. Fix me. Batch should blow up if you forget to give it a URI or you hand it nil. Okay. Notes to self. Fix the bugs. Try again. Ah, that looks good. Right. This looks like an archival object. Title wake low, position 10. Yes. We have a note. It has a type. Position 9. I guess it put them in backwards because it does that, just because of the way it writes them to the file. Okay, that's actually looking pretty good. That's feeling kind of done. So let's have a quick review of the plan. We've pulled out artist title, album year, comments track number. I created a top level. I didn't set a language to English. I think English is funny. Sorry, I think language is funny because it's not strictly required, but you get a warning if you don't set it. Just leave it then. Archival object, title, year, comments, track number, artist, and agent person. Oh, and we should see these thingies linking to an agent as a creator, which we do. And they should all link to the same agent, which it looks like they do. Okay, that might be it. So let's finish off by, I guess I can chop out this stuff, although it doesn't really matter. Yeah, the return value of run isn't actually used anywhere by the importer. That's just something I was using for testing. One last quick review of the code. Yes, MP3, this converter will handle that. I guess maybe, since we're gold plating, maybe let's just quickly look at translating back in the user interface when we were looking at the background jobs thing here. It looked a bit stupid because it just said MP3 under import data, so I can't exactly remember how to translate these, but let's have a look. In fact, this helpful documentation should tell me how to put YAML files in somewhere. I think I just need to create a front-end directory and then put something under locales. So let's have a go at that. Yeah. So we'll have front-end locales and then en.yaml. And I can probably have a look at the existing plugins and just see. We must have done this somewhere here. Cat in a box, front-end locales, en. Okay. The wonderful cat in a box gem. Probably ArchivesSpace's finest gem. En plugins. Cat in a box. Yeah, I'm not sure this is going to be en plugins actually. We'll see if this works. So we're going to have en. Let's have a look at the drop-down list here. Often you can get a hint of what it's meant to be. Import type. Yeah. So I'm actually just going to grab the ArchivesSpace codebase for import type and just find a YAML file that has it in common locales. Yeah, that looks like it. Okay, so we have import job and then import type underscore whatever. So I think that's basically what I'm going to end up with too. I'll just nick a bit of that. En, so I think I'm just going to say import job, import type, MP3, and then I'll say zip file containing MP3s, and we'll just hope that works. Let's try that. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to restart some things now to get that to load, so I'm going to knock out the... Oh, I don't need to kill the back end actually, I'll just kill the front end. We'll give that a restart. Hopefully it finds it. If it doesn't, I'll have to do some live debugging, and that won't be great for anyone. Okay, here goes. Wait for it to reload everything. Input data. There. Oh look, the system works. Zip file containing MP3s. That is beautiful. Okay, so just to quickly recap what I did, because I didn't know. So under not cat in a box, under MP3 importer, I just created a front end locales directory, and then within that, en import job, and then import job underscore MP3, where that MP3 thing is just the same MP3 that you put here when you defined the thing. Okay, well, let's try it out. So we should be able to add a file. I'm going to actually add the proper album zip file now. Queue that up. Okay. Oh, no, it's a disaster. And a classic Ruby error message, undefined on nil. Let's have a look at the backend log. Block in load dependency streaming import. Oh, right. I think I know what this is, although I really shouldn't have gotten this far. So if we look at our code, I've got the resource, but the archival object doesn't have, it's a reference to the resource it belongs to. That really should have thrown a validation error. I'm going to add that to my list of bugs. Because that's easy to forget to do. Fix me, batch blow up, and I'll just say validations should check for missing resource refs. I'm guessing that's what the problem was anyway. Let's see if that correction has made a difference. Yes. Okay, this time for sure. Ah, okay, progress. Right, so we're getting some extra validation problems. Yeah, this is a difference between using JSON model from hash. I mean, JSON model from hash validates against the schema, which catches a fairly broad class of potential issues, but there are some validations that can only really happen on the server side, and there's a set of those as well that run. So like this, you can end up with errors that you didn't see until you loaded it in, unfortunately. Rules and source. And that's on the JSON model name person. Right, so when we create a name, I think we just need to say source local or name the source of that name. Okay, I think that was it. Third time. Yes, yes, go. This pretty much has to work, right? Ooh, success. Okay. It's looking plausible. Let's take a look. we have a resource record. It has the album name. It is a collection. It has a publication date, and it has 11 whole tracks. It all looks fine, and then pick one of these at random. 2011 again. It has a link to the creator, which is good. It has the note. Yeah, it's kind of looking plausible. See my Mac Mini just struggling while I record the screencast. Let's have a quick look at the agent. So we should see this agent linking back to the records as well. And we do. Okay, well, I think that's great news. So there you have it. There's that's how to write a converter from scratch, plus a little bit of random debugging thrown in for good measure. I'll push this all up to a repo somewhere soon. If you have a look on the Hudson Malongolo GitHub area, I might just create a repo called MP3 Converter or something like that, so you should be able to find the code there. Thanks for bearing with me for, I don't know, an hour or something like that. It's a long time to listen to anyone talk, least of all me. Yeah, send me questions if anything I said doesn't make sense, and otherwise, have a nice day. See ya.